This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about COVID relief funds and where they really go. Here joining us today with his latest piece at the appeal.org, the headline, "It's a Money Grab, Billions in COVID Relief Going to Fund Police and Prisons." Brian Dolanara joins us on Make It Plain today. Welcome, buddy. How are you, Brian?
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So tell us about this. COVID relief money is going to the carceral state rather than where it should be going?
Yeah, that's what's been going on. It's kind of under the radar. It's starting to come to light. You know, I started following this over last year around the summer. I started seeing news stories pop up where, you know, in one place in Colorado Springs, they were using COVID money at the local jail to replace the locks at the jail. That didn't seem like COVID relief to me. And so I started following the story. And then in my local community, I live in Champaign-Urbana here in Illinois, 2 hours south of Chicago, where the county board voted and approved, a Democratic majority county board approved a $20 million jail plan. $5 million of that came from COVID money. That's a jail that they've been planning to build for some 10 years here. So I started following this story, and in communities from Maine to California, there's folks fighting new jail expansion projects, police acquisition of SWAT trucks. In Alabama, a large $400 million prison project to build 3 prisons. That's like, Alabama's like one of the only states not really trying to build prisons any longer. So it's especially with the coming midterms, it's a real hot subject right now. And people find it, contradictory that COVID relief money is going to these kind of projects.
It most certainly is contradictory. This was America Rescue Plan money?
That's right. It came in 2 major waves. One was under former President Trump. There was almost $2 trillion voted through. What was the CARE Act, voted through in the early days of COVID. And then when Biden came into office, he forwarded, and the Democratic Congress passed the ARPA plan. That's the American Rescue Plan Act, $1.9 trillion. So there's some almost $4 trillion that's been allocated from the feds. This is the largest dispersal of federal monies to local communities since the New Deal. So it's a big project.
So I'm trying to figure out, where did it take place when this money was being allocated that people just automatically said, well, we're not going to use it for COVID? I'm trying to figure out where was that miscommunication, and were there no obviously there weren't. I mean, it's a rhetorical question. I guess there were no fail safes in the legislation, Brian, to ensure that it would be spent in the way it was intended.
Yeah, well, I think it was, there's some benefit to allowing communities to determine for themselves how the money should be spent. And there's some communities that are being quite forward-thinking in a democratic process where the community is deciding how that money should be spent. And some people are taking the time to do that. Other communities where they've been stumping for years for jail projects, but the money has fallen short. Now there's this major windfall of money. And the local police authorities are taking advantage of a situation. So, it's like there's issues of jail projects, of what some claim would be overcrowding. People I interview, they said there's a rest problem. It's not an overcrowding problem. And, communities have been fighting the issues for years and years. COVID, when it hit, jails depopulated during that period.
Right.
And it became quite clear that, you couldn't continue mass incarceration during a pandemic. And, by will, simply, people began decarcerating. But now that the federal money came down, people are taking advantage of these large caches, millions of dollars that's coming down from the feds. So it's one showing that we can decarcerate if we want to, but given our proclivities and our history, our trajectory as a country in the last 30, 40 years, our growing inequalities, racial inequalities and economic inequalities, we're going to do what we've been doing, which is locking folks up.
I want to just lift this up from your piece, folks. And again, this is at the appeal.org headline. It's a money grab, billions in COVID relief going to fund police in prisons. And prisons, you have a paragraph here. When the American Rescue Plan Act funds started flowing, backers of Alabama's prison plan saw a new opportunity. In late September 2021, the Alabama legislature passed a $1.3 billion prison construction package that included that $400 million from the American Rescue Plan, 5 times the amount budgeted for hospitals. I guess by that you mean hospitals in Alabama, correct?
Correct.
So all this money going to the prison reconstruction, and I think you just alluded to this, the prison population is on the decline, right?
In most places in the country, yes. And certainly in the wake of what's happened in the last year with the Defund the Police campaign, the killing of George Floyd by police, and efforts statewide from California to New York. In Illinois, where I live, the prison population has gone from its height around 40,000 people to around 25, 26,000. There's been a massive decarceration effort around the country, and people are taking different measures to do that. But Alabama's, far behind this trend. And so the governor there, Kay Ivey, has been stumping for this prison project, and people have been fighting it on the ground. So I talked to activists with the Alabama Justice Initiative that's led by LaTanya Tate, and I talked to Veronica Johnson, our number 2 person, and they told the story of going out into these, into Trump territory in rural Alabama and talking to folks and telling them, local communities, small communities, rural areas cannot support, not sustainable for small communities like that. So the local white folks, Trump supporting white folks, joined an alliance with them to stop the prisons. But then once this federal money came down, the governor and the legislature pushed this through. Now there has been, some fail-safe. People have attempted to block this. They appealed to the U.S. Treasury, and the Treasury released a final ruling saying that COVID money could not be spent on prisons, on correctional institutions. And yet Alabama's still pushing this forward. So folks are now going to, they will still need some financial backing. They'll need some bonds to build these large, expensive prisons. 3 prisons are not cheap, And so now they're trying to go to the banks to try to block the financial backing for these projects.
Yeah, that's good. The activists are. So did you say there were some Trump supporters that were also out there against the prison project?
Yes. Well, there's a way in which, the activists, I think we're able to just go door to door and talk to people one-on-one, right. And convince them why prisons are not good for anybody in this country, even for rural white folks, who, you might have a cousin or a son who, methamphetamine, speed is prominent in these communities, kids who go the wrong way and end up in prison themselves, white kids, working class white kids. So I think we need to do a better job of really talking to one another and convincing one another of why prisons are no good for anybody.
Well, it's good that constituency is getting it for what it is. I mean, it is an industry. Unfortunately, I was with Reverend Barber today, and he talks about poverty, as you know, Brian, But most importantly, what he often say is, it's important for people to see how many white folks in poverty. We're headed to West Virginia now. The reason being, when he put it better today than I've ever heard him put it. When you racialize it, it's able to be dismissed. So if we continue to say that the carceral state is exclusively black and only unfair to us and only, devastating to our community, it'll continue to be ignored as it always has been. So it's important when other communities say, "When I hold up now, we're in this too." And I don't know if you've been, Brian, I tell everybody, if you ever want a wake up call about how bad white folk are treated, just go to West Virginia. Matter of fact, I tell people, if you're depressed or you're having a hard time in life, go to West Virginia. I guarantee you they're doing worse than you are, and you'll feel better. So sometimes we get in our own fish bowls and we think we're the only ones doing bad. I'm having a bad day. My family doesn't love me, whatever it is. Go to West Virginia and you'll be cured of all of that. But that's fascinating, and I hope that type of understanding on the part of that constituency grows. So you kind of allude to this in the article. Joe Biden says we don't need to defund the police; we need to fund the police. So is that the same as him? See, and we didn't know this. Your article went out then. See, if your article was out, then that would have been fodder. Like, well, hold up, dude. Are you condoning, endorsing COVID money going to fund the police? What's your take on that, Brian?
Yeah, clearly the Biden administration has been alerted to this. The U.S. Treasury has been notified, and there's been no real effort to stop this. And indeed, Democrats, the leadership in Biden has done a 180. You think about just after George Floyd was killed by police in Minneapolis, Democratic leaders were wearing kente cloths and kneeling in the U.S. Congress, and trying to turn the black rage during that summer into political votes. And so now that Biden is in office, and now that Republicans are vying for leadership in the midterm elections, we're seeing the Democrats and the Republicans fight for one another who can be most pro-police. And the Democrats playing their old sort of 1-2 step of expressing their support for police, and Biden coming out saying that he's been quite explicit that he's in the State of the Union address that of his the COVID plan, ARPA funds, 350 billion went towards police. And then just recently in his budget plan for 22-23, there's another 30 billion allotted for the police. So the Democrats are trying to, fight back against this claim that they're anti-police, so it's really confused the issue, and it's only bolstered the police and their supporters. I think we're seeing right now a real backlash of police who were, during the Defund the Police campaign and the campaign post George Floyd, police legitimacy was really questioned across the country in all new unprecedented ways. And now the police are fighting back against that.
Yeah. So you answered my question. Clearly, they mean fund in the full sense of the word. It's dangerous, though, because, as your article also points out, this all kicked off in the era of the George Floyd rebellion, the rebellion to his death. And I wonder what makes them think the masses' memory is that short. Now, granted, and I'm sure you'll agree, in our movement, y'all, we got to do better. And sometimes, the news cycle affects our sustenance of a particular issue. But I don't think Joe Biden mobilized the base who put him in office by saying, instead of defund, we need to fund. I don't think that helped him one bit. And the Democrats could lose everything. And we really will be looking at more going into the carceral state. You mentioned in your article, my mayor here in New York, Eric Adams, who seems to be down with this fund the police thing and encouraging it. And then you also talk about, too, Brian, it's not just the states. I mean, they're private companies who are vendors to these systems and the police and to these states. They're making money, too, because some of this money is going to those vendors. And this is the new technology to catch us even when we're not guilty, right?
That's correct. And even Biden has been in support of using these ARPA funds for new police technologies. These shot spotters, which are supposed to identify gunshots, these are placed in mostly Black and poor neighborhoods. They're hundreds of $1,000s to fund, and they're provided by private companies. So this is technology which, has, like in Chicago, close to me, it was the shot spotters that pegged Alan Toledo, who was killed by police just after George Floyd in Chicago, to great community uproar. And yet other people have been, spotted. They've been held in jail for months and then found not guilty and set free, but they've been sitting in the jail due to this faulty technology. So there's other technology that the police have been wanting for a long time, and now they got the federal money for it. Automated license plate readers are another one that departments are buying up en masse, and are faulty and flawed technology, not really proven to solve murders or reduce the number of murders in the community, but yet they're being sold as some solution to the problem. The problem that's really what we know are economic and social problems that are longstanding.
In closing, Brian, what can you report to the larger community about the good news that's coming from organizing against this, and what some people are doing, and what some people's options, what our options can be? What are the people's options?
Yeah, well, I think there's a real opportunity for communities across the country now to find out where this money is going, where it's flowing, and how they can stop it and prevent these kind of jail proposals and police proposals, but also how they can get their hands on this money themselves to do good things with it. So I spoke to folks in South Bend, Indiana, who are opening a behavioral crisis intervention center. Rather than police taking people to the jail, they can drop people off at the crisis center where they'll get treatment they need. I have other friends here in Champaign who have gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in COVID relief money to fund our reentry program in town here for helping people who are getting out of prison and transitioning back into the community. And as there's been more people getting out of prison released during COVID, there's more people in the community with need. And as we further decarcerate, we're going to need more money for reentry programs and people doing good work. So these kind of programs are going on all over the country, and there's a chance to get federal monies to support them to do further good work.
And do we know how much money was not applied, not spent, protecting those who are in the carceral system from COVID? Because we know a lot of conversations about folks need to get out of prison because it was an incubator, a petri dish for COVID. I mean, that's where that money should have gone, right? Strip everything away. If nothing else, that money should have gone to making sure those in prison and in city jails and what have you didn't get COVID, didn't spread COVID, and didn't die from COVID. Do we have any idea how little attention that was given?
Yeah, well, we're still continuing to find out where the money went, but it took a while here in Illinois. I've written on this. I've been following the story of COVID in prisons and jails. And ultimately what worked in Illinois was mass testing and mass vaccination. And now there's still a need to get the boosters out. There's still a need to vaccinate the guards who have been very slow in getting the vaccine. So there's still work to be done in prisons. A lot of prisons have very restrictive visitation policies. A lot of local jails shut down all their visitation and replaced them with for-profit video industries. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done inside prisons around these issues. COVID is not over. And in many ways, the state has taken advantage of the opportunity to impose more lockdowns in prisons and more restrictive measures. And there's still need to build solidarity with people on the inside.
Yeah, and let's just also say we have a lot of folks who have jobs, and those jobs they have no choice but to work for the carceral state. They aren't treated well either. All right, it's from top. Am I right, Brian? From top to bottom, everything about it, and that lends to the misery. When you have workers in the carceral system that are mistreated, sometimes they'll mistreat those who are imprisoned. So none of this is why we need to be all about decarceration. Brian Dolinar is an independent journalist. That's the only way we get news like this. BrianDolinar.com. Check him out and tell us about the appeal. I'm just learning about the appeal because of you. That's another independent site, I guess, for news, right, Brian?
Yeah, it's a long-standing journalistic outlet that really produces excellent material on prisons and the police. It's based in Chicago. They recently unionized, so it's one of the few unionized media outlets that exists, and on the left. So it's an important outlet where I get some of my best news, and they really have really high journalistic standards and put out really great material.
So, folks, we invite you to check out theappeal.org as well. Lastly, Brian, what's your next project? What's the next piece you're working on that we can look forward to?
I'm working on a follow-up to this story to continue following the money and following where it goes. Drones are being purchased by police departments across the U.S. SWAT teams are being funded, and so we're still continuing to follow the money.
Yeah, and we appear to be. I mean, we can't count our chickens before they hatch. To be getting out of COVID, but this is we know what long COVID is. This money creates long carceral, because what you just described, drones and SWAT, that goes beyond the pandemic. Drones and SWAT will be with us even after we're all vaccinated and no longer catching COVID, and that's not what that money was supposed to be to continue to over police us. So, Brian, we're thankful to you for pointing this out to us. And folks, we're going to keep Brian on our list of expert journalists and witnesses and call on him from time to time and have him call upon us when you're doing something. If you don't hear from us in time, you reach out to us and invite yourself on Make It Plain whenever you feel like it, Brian. You do great work, and we need to get this out here, okay?
Thank you for the conversation, Mark.
All right, wonderful. Brian Dolinar, folks, BrianDolinar.com and theappeal.org. Check them both out. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.